This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
It's so funny. I believe that things happen for a reason. He doesn't know this, but not more than 20 minutes ago, I was online looking at different travel destinations. Not even kidding. And then he shows up. He is the man that you should be talking to, myself included. Globetrotting with Lynx is a premier travel agency specializing in cruises and so much more. We're going to talk about the cruise experience, the 2026 cruise experience. Radically different. If you haven't cruised in a while, it's very different. And he's our expert, bringing him in here today. Martin Lynx Lessem joins us on the program. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, Steve. How are you doing today?
Fantastic. And I have to tell you, I have a friend who went on an MSC cruise out of Puerto Rico literally last week, which inspired me wanting to look online and just poking around and checking out destinations. It's been a while since I cruised. I looked at the pictures, not even the excursion photos, just the boat and what's going on there. Oh my gosh. I'm blown away about the size of the ship, the amenities, the opulence, and it was very reasonably priced. Do you think that a lot of us, people like me that haven't cruised in a while, get that realization that this isn't, the cruise ships of yesterday?
So absolutely. I mean, if you look at the various lines that are out there, each one caters to a different type of audience for the most part. So like Disney cruises primarily cater to people with families.
Sure.
Royal Caribbean is generally a younger crowd. You've got Carnival, which are primarily more toward partying type boats. And then you've got Virgin Voyages, which cater to mainly adults. 18 plus is their requirement for sailing. And, MSC is a more I'd say millennial Gen X kind of crowd. And, what they've started doing with a lot of these ships is they've begun tailoring the insides to be as not opulent necessarily as possible, but certainly as entertaining and as warm and welcoming as possible. You've got a great example of this on the Quantum Ultra class ships with Royal Caribbean, where they've started incorporating a lot of fun things into them. So they have this thing called the Bionic Bar, where you've got these two robotic arms. You can get up, you select your drink, and then the robotic arms make them and they get delivered to you, which is just a really fun thing to watch.
I've actually seen the video of it. It's really
Yeah.
cool, where it goes up there, grabs, that liquor, mixes it with the other one. Just different types of entertainment.
Yeah. So, you've got that. You've got your standard lounges on most ships, and every ship has 4 or 5 different lounges that cater again to a different ambiance for each one. So you're often going to find one that's more nautically themed. You might find one that harkens back to the more classic ocean liner feel of the 1920s and 30s. You'll find one that's more of a disco or a dance feel. And each one is unique in their decor. They're unique in their layout. Almost always you're going to find one that's a piano bar. So, whatever you're looking for, you can generally find it on a cruise ship.
I know that a lot of people are always looking for some deals, some specials. A lot of people might be price shopping versus a ship that fits their wants and desires. What kind of tips do you have? If somebody's just starting to look around, what should we be looking for?
So the biggest tip that I can give most people is find an itinerary that you like. If you have a place that you absolutely want to go, find an itinerary with that included. Once you've done that, the next step would be reaching out to a travel advisor. And the reason I say that is because generally we get deals from the cruise agency that you guys don't see.
Hmm.
So, we get things like additional discounts. We get discounts on additional passengers that you might not see. So if you're looking to cruise with like 2 additional friends in your cabin, we'll get things like 75% off the third guest that don't necessarily come out to you as the average cruise customer. Additionally, we also get perks that we can share through the agencies that we book with. So, as an example, I recently took a cruise with Princess back in November, and it was a cruise that I booked as a guest, in essence, of myself, just to test what the perks were like. And,
Hmm.
one of the perks was that I got Princess Plus at a discounted rate. That's their premium package, essentially, that gives you the Wi-Fi. It gives you a certain number of drinks every day. It gives you access to some of the specialty dining. And it was considerably cheaper going through my agency than if I had done that directly and bought the Princess Plus package myself. So we get things like that. It's easier for.
Thank you for your dedication and your research. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
it is needed, and I appreciate that.
But the other thing is that we can also ensure that if you have specialty needs, that those get taken into consideration. So if you have disabilities or things like that, most cruise lines are happy to accommodate you if they know in advance. And most people, if they book by themselves, completely forget about the fact that, if you're hearing disabled or if you have mobility issues, if I know that, I'll let the cruise line know when we're booking, and they'll make those accommodations for you in advance.
Wow.
So a lot of stuff like that, is really why I recommend going with a travel advisor. But also, again, like right now is a good time to book for late summer, early spring. There are discounts going on for that. There are discounts that are beginning to come out now uh, for late fall and early winter, especially in the Caribbean areas. So summer, you're going to look toward uh, generally like European cruisings are very popular in the summer. So lots of deals going on right now on European cruises. In the in the fall and spring, you start getting a lot of things for in the fall and winter, you start getting a lot of things for the fall, for the Caribbean area, and also for like the South Pacific. Because when it's winter up here, it's summer down there.
Hmm. I I'm seeing that travel professionals are back. Pre-internet, that's how you booked your trip. You went to a travel agent,
Yep.
and there's so many advantages. And it's not like you're paying this so much more, but you have accountability. If you have an issue, they're there. You book it online with one of these big online portals. You really don't have a way to reach somebody. Gosh forbid something happens, you need to make a change. And also the tips and the inside information that you're sharing right now, you're not going to get
No.
anywhere else. You have to, literally deal with somebody one on one. What do you think? What do you think, Martin, are the biggest misconceptions that people have nowadays about cruising?
So I think one of the biggest misconceptions that people have is, um, for example, I will use a family member as an example here. I have a family member who nowadays is very happy to go cruising, but about 5 years ago, before they went on one of their first cruises, was very afraid about getting seasick.
Mm,
And with the older ships, that was a risk because, the older ships were not as wide in their base. They weren't as stable. They didn't have as many things built in.
yep.
But nowadays, ships have stabilizers that are built in to decrease the roll of the ship so you don't feel as much of that. If you tell your travel advisor in advance, we know where on the ship to put you so that you feel as little of that as possible. So
Mhm.
even if you sail into worse weather, you'll experience less of it. But the ships themselves are also designed around concepts of comfort. So even on board, there's, the way that they're built and the way that they're laid out. It's such a way that, unless you're sitting very much at the top deck on the pool all the time, you're not going to notice a lot of the ship rolling. You're not going to see a lot of that because a lot of that's also visual. It's very visual when the sea's going back and forth and you can see
Right.
that your brain starts to do things. But most of the specialty dining, for example, a lot of those are more interior, so you don't see the rolling of the ship. Many of the lounges will have windows on the side, but you can sit away from those so that you don't notice it, and a lot of things like that. That's one of the big misconceptions. The other one is that cruising is for old people. Um, I mean, you go on cruises nowadays, you will get everything from like I said, on Disney cruises, kids all the way up to yeah, you'll get the boomer generation, but quite heavily you'll get Gen X, Millennials, and Gen Z. They're a lot of the ones that are cruising right now.
Sure. My
So,
friend who just went is 51
yep,
and went with her daughters, 17 and 19. Wonderful experience. The excursions were amazing. Why don't we talk about excursions?
sure.
How is that done? Do you book it before or when you just book your cruise just to make sure that you have them all locked down?
So there are a few different ways you can do it. You can either book excursions through the cruise lines directly. The advantage with this is that if anything goes wrong, the cruise line will help you fix it. If you're coming back late, you don't have to be a pier runner and hope that the gangplank hasn't been pulled up, because usually if it's a excursion booked by the cruise company, they will wait for you. The other option is if you feel comfortable doing it, through a travel advisor, we have a whole bunch of other companies that we work with that will guarantee that you're back on time, and we can book those and you can tailor them a little bit to what you want. So the upside with the ones from the cruise lines are that they have partnerships with local companies. Usually there's an excursion for everybody, but sometimes there are just things that you can't book. So I was on a cruise back in 2015 in French Polynesia, and we had found an excursion to a beautiful blue lagoon that was about 45 minutes away from where the cruise ship had anchored,
Hmm.
with a separate company, but the guarantee was we'd be back in time. And, we had planned it so that we left early enough in the day so that if anything went wrong, we had plenty of time to get back to the ship. And
Yep.
the amazing thing with this was we had this beautiful blue lagoon, crystal clear blue waters, and it was a spawning point for blacktip reef sharks. So we had these little tiny blacktip reef sharks that were probably about maybe 6, 7 inches, just swimming around your ankles.
Mm.
And they were these super cute little things. And, it was just such an amazing experience. And we did that through essentially through our travel advisor and through a separate tour company.
So I want to focus on that for a moment because in the cruise that I mentioned that my friend literally just came back on,
Mhm.
they did an excursion through MSC. It was sanctioned by MSC. And I'm trying to think of what the challenge was. There was a delay coming back. I don't know if it wasn't weather. There was something where they were going to get back to the ship later than they were supposed to. But it was an MSC excursion. Therefore, the ship was had to wait. They had to
Right.
wait. If this was one of the other excursions, third party, you booked it, you may have missed your cruise. Who knows what could have happened at that point?
It is absolutely a gamble. And this is again where a good travel advisor comes in, because if you know that you're in port for, so a lot of ships come in usually around like 8 or 9 in the morning, and depending on the cruise company, they'll leave somewhere between 5 and 7 at night. Some ships have overnights where they'll stay in one port for an extra day, in which case this is less of an issue.
Sure.
But in general, they're leaving at a certain point. So if I know that, and if I know that I'm booking you and you want to do a special excursion that's not available through the cruise company, I will sit down and figure out what tour operators are in the area, what tour operators can start that excursion early enough and get you back to the ship so that you have at least 2 hours before the gangway comes up.
Hmm. And once again, back to the value of a travel professional.
Yeah.
The rest of us, we don't know how to do that. We're just rolling the dice, going online, filling out a form, putting a credit card in, and that's it. When you look back, let's say in the last 15 years, Martin, your favorite cruises, and let's break them into geos. Here we go. Caribbean. What was your favorite one, say in the last 15 years?
So my favorite one in the last 15 years is one that is sadly not available at the moment, which was a cruise to Cuba.
Hmm.
We had booked it under a administration when that was acceptable, and then the administration changed, and they basically grandfathered all the ones that were booked in, and then ceased it after that. So, but it was an amazing trip. We did Key West first, and then Havana afterwards, and we were docked in Havana for 3 days. So you really got to experience Havana. We got to see, all of the amazing clubs down there. We got to do a whole bunch of incredible tours in Havana itself and get a
Wow.
good feel for the culture and the people. And it was just amazing.
So let's go outside the Caribbean.
Yep.
Let's say Europe or any other destination. What would you say your favorite in the last 15 years was?
Sure. So my favorite and my other two favorites would be the cruise that we did in Tahiti, um, which was about 11 years ago. Just because of I mean the scenery was incredible. We did that cruise over New Year's Eve, and
Wow.
we actually had a chance to do New Year's right on the international date line,
Oh, how
which was
cool.
so incredible. So we got to do New Year's twice. We actually were in New Year's in one hemisphere and then sailed back to the other one to do it again. And that was so much fun. The people we were sailing with were incredible. It was a smaller ship. It was the Tahitian Princess, which sadly they no longer own, so it was only about 700 people. Um,
Mm.
Aside from that, I'd say that the other really, really fun one that I've done, which was actually just this past summer, I did a Mediterranean cruise, which was specifically the Greek Isles. So we went to Santorini, we went to Mykonos, we went to Kusadasi in Turkey, then Naples in Italy, and then back up to Civitavecchia, which is the cruise port out of Rome. And I mean, Santorini is an amazing island. It's the one that's famous from like all of the postcards with the white buildings and the blue roofs.
Hmm.
And once you're in Santorini, you almost can't take a bad picture. You have to really try to get a bad picture in Santorini. They all come out looking like postcards. And Mykonos is incredible. You can see the ruins of Delos in Mykonos, which is if you're into history, is so amazing. And then you see the ruins of Ephesus in Turkey in Kusadasi. And then on the way back, we went to Naples and we did a trip up to Pompeii.
Mm. Wow.
So, we got to see a site that was about 15% excavated. We got to see a site that was about 20% excavated. And then Pompeii is getting close to 60, 70% excavated. So just that alone, and then getting to Rome afterwards was such an amazing experience.
Mm. Have you have you always had an affinity for history?
Yes, yeah, I've loved history. It's been a passion of mine since I was in probably middle school. And I study history quite extensively for to do a lot of traveling, and it's just fun to go to historical places and learn more.
I spoke with somebody recently and they said, you know what I love? Just cobblestones. And it just resonated with me
Mhm.
because it's a different period, a different time, and it just, whenever I see them, it's like I want to walk on them. I want to look at what's around them. There's a reason they're there, in terms of history. How has cruising changed since the pandemic? Anything in place in terms of health, safety, the experience?
So there's a lot that's been done in terms of health and safety. One of the big things is that most cruise lines, and there are some that are still catching up, but most cruise lines as part of the refurbishment of ships or as part of new ships that they're building, are including better filtration system in their air processing and air handling. One of the good things about that is it means that if you need to be quarantined on a cruise ship, you can usually be quarantined in your cabin instead of needing to be quarantined somewhere else.
Hmm.
Because the air won't with the filters will sort of regulate how the germs are spread between cabins. The other big thing is that, right after the pandemic, um, vaccination was required. If you were going to go on a cruise, you had to present your little card that said you were vaccinated.
Sure.
That's not usually a requirement now, although most cruises about 24 hours before sailing will ask you to fill out a health questionnaire. That health questionnaire will include the symptoms of COVID and of the flu. And if you answer positively toward that, they will usually ask you to test at the port before you get on board. And if you test positive, they'll probably deny you boarding. Also, just hand cleanliness is a huge thing. If you cruise on Royal Caribbean often, if you have not heard the phrase washy washy, you absolutely will.
You know what? A reminder can't help.
No.
Sometimes we forget. Um, Technology. In my friend who just came back,
Mm.
they were talking about the app that's available where you get so much information. What can you tell us about that, especially for somebody that hasn't cruised in a while?
So technology has advanced quite a bit. You mentioned the app, and I think every cruise company, with rare exceptions, has an app nowadays. Some of the more exclusive liners still go with like traditional paper schedules on a daily basis and like paper updates because they want to give you that feel of exclusivity.
Hmm.
But most cruise lines nowadays have an app where you can schedule either excursions, you can reserve restaurant and specialty dining. Most cruise lines have gone from old keys to key cards. Some cruise lines have gone from key cards to essentially what looks like a fob. So Princess and Virgin are good examples of this, where you get like a little round fob that you can put into a bracelet or you can clip onto a badge. And this lets them track you around the ship. But what it also does is it lets the crew give you a better experience. So
Hmm.
all of these fobs have like a near field capability. So when their ordering system gets close enough to you, it will tell them your name and cabin number. So they can address you by name, even if it's like the first time they've met you. And it gives you this feeling of getting this more personalized service. Um, some cruise companies have interactive displays throughout the ship. So if you're lost, you can bring up the display, sort of, say, I'm trying to get to here, and it will tell you how to do that. And you can transfer that to your app so you can follow it on the app. It's become technologically easy, and you would think that that might actually decrease the number of staff that the cruise ships use, but it actually hasn't. It's kept it at about the same level.
Amazing. I love your attention to detail and your experience. You walk the walk, talk the talk. There are people that are out there, travel advisors. Yeah, they travel a little bit. They don't know the inside and out. Now, certainly, you're the expert on cruises. You can also book land vacations as well, right?
Yes, I can book land vacations as well. I primarily target cruises because I enjoy cruising myself. But having said that, I have been to, I want to say it's 48 different countries, and I'm adding another two later this year. And that puts me at about 25% of all of the officially recognized United Nations countries on the planet. I've been
I don't
to,
even have I don't know how to respond to that. That's
uh,
insane.
I've been
Wow.
to every continent except Antarctica, and that one is on the list, but it's probably about 2 years out.
Amazing. How do
Uh,
we find you, Martin, if somebody even just wants to pick your brain, they're not really sure which cruise and what might fit for their family or their needs. How do we find you?
sure. So the best two ways to find me are essentially going to my website, which is globetrottingwithlynx.com. That's globetrotting with lynx.com. The other way is to email me directly at links@globetrottingwithlynx.com. And I'm more than happy to respond that way.
Uh,
Those are definitely the easiest ways to reach me.
your nickname is Lynx.
Correct.
How'd you get that?
So I ran for about 17 and a half years a science fiction fan organization devoted to military science fiction, specifically one series by an author called David Weber. And one of the ways that we could reward our members was with these fake peerages that essentially give them a title and give them like a recognition for all the work that they had done. And the organization granted one to me, which I had no clue was coming, so it was kind of a nice surprise, which was the Grand Duchy of Lynx, which is one of the planets in the books. So I liked the name, and I tend to go by it in fandom circles, and I figured it was a fun little fun little play on things. So that's how Globetrotting with Lynx came about.
Love it. And, in a way, if we think links, but link, Link, you are linking people with dream vacations.
Yes.
There's some links there. Wonderful talking with you. Love your affinity for cruising, travel, the information, your experience. Um, Really amazing what you've done and the information that you have. Just fantastic. Thank you for being here today. Truly appreciate it, and looking forward if we get a chance to get together again.
Yeah, my pleasure. And thank you for having me on today, Steve.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.